Good morning, friends. Good to see you all today. It's good to be here with you as we continue our According to Jim series, lessons from the book of James in the New Testament. Last week we talked about being careful what we allow into our lives to infiltrate our lives. And I thought I'd begin with an experience I had a couple of years ago. One night, Darla and I were fast asleep when I was unexpectedly awakened by a large thump in our house. I mean, it was a boom. And I was sleeping hard, and I was fighting my ways up through the covers when suddenly I heard a voice yelling, and I heard footsteps coming closer to our bedroom door, and that's when it happened. Our door crashed open, and with a huge thud, something hit our floor. Now, I had been sleeping soundly. My reaction was not probably what it should have been, and I found myself sputtering, "Who? What? Hey!" And that's when the voice came calmly from our dark bedroom floor, the voice of my son Logan, who said, "It's just me, Dad. Everything's okay. See you in the morning." And with that, he walked out and closed the door. Now, my heart was pounding, racing, and I turned to Darla and I said, "What the heck was that all about?" So I went into his room and I said, what is going on, son? And his response was, "I was dreaming that there was a ghost in my room, and I was trying to get away from it." So the initial thud was him hitting the floor because he was standing up on his bed looking at the ghost. He hit the floor with a thud, and then he took off running down the hallway as fast as he could away from the ghost. Now, I was just glad our door was not latched, or we would have had a Logan-sized hole in it, okay? Now, why do we need to watch what comes into our lives? Well, you see, earlier that day, my boys, who were both the twins, were both in their early 20s, had told me about a video they had seen from a haunted house in San Diego. And they said, "Dad, you have got to see this." We watched several different videos from the house, and it was creepy. I mean, it was just downright creepy. So I know exactly where his ghost thoughts had come from, because I had some of those same fear-filled thoughts in my mind. It took me several days talking to God to get myself cleaned out. And happily to say, there were no more night runs down our hallway, which I was glad of. Be careful what you let in. James put it like this: you need to keep ourselves from being polluted by the world. One of the marks of being a true follower of God that we looked at last week. Today we're going to examine another simple instruction from James as he addresses something that many of us encounter as we deal with people in different situations. I want you to know I'm going to be talking to myself today because I am intimately acquainted with this emotion. Regularly, I battle it. The title for the message today, Eruption, which is a very good descriptor for our subject today, which is anger. Hey, anger's real, right? Hey, we've all encountered it from within. We've seen others who express this type of emotion. I may be over the top just a little bit, but I'll tell you what, you let it out, it can be just like that. And the causes of anger are many. I thought about some of the things that make me angry. Frustration with things. Anybody ever get mad at a computer? Oh, yeah. I hate those things at times. I love them and I hate them at the same time. How about putting together easy-to-assemble furniture? Oh, my goodness. Anyway, I'm not even going to go there. Working with people at times can be maddening. Have you ever had somebody come and ask you for advice? You tell them good advice. They go off and do exactly the opposite of what you told them they ought to do, and then they blame you for not talking loud enough. Ever had that happen? Oh, yeah, we have. How about communication challenges? Those can bring anger flowing up over the top. Ever had one of those misinterpreted conversations with your spouse? No matter what is said, it's the wrong thing and the situation heads downhill real fast. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It can bring the anger just kind of surging up a little bit. Now, anger's real. I refereed high school soccer for many years. Boys were especially prone to this when it came to playing the game. Girls got angry too. They just were a lot sneakier in the way they expressed it, okay? Boys, though, you could see it begin to take shape because you'd see a guy all of a sudden make contact with another dude's eyes across the field. You could see the jaw clench up, and you knew what was going to happen. You couldn't call the foul before it happened, but boy, you could see it happening right in front of you. It was a train wreck getting ready to go. Now, you know what anger's like, okay? I brought something with me today. Okay, here we go. You know what anger's like? Anger's like this. Okay? Now tell me what's happening inside of here, right? Do you think some pressure's building up? My apologies. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm not going to do that. Of course, not in church, right? Okay, but here's the deal. That's exactly what it's like, right? Things start to get to us, and the pressure starts to build, and when it opens up, it's messy. I got a couple pictures back here behind me. A famous mountain that exploded in Washington in 1980 is Mount St. Helens. Okay, isn't that something? Now, there were some early warning signs something was happening prior to the eruption. There was an earthquake on March 20th. Steam began to vent, and then there was a bulge that started on the edge of the mountain by the end of April. By May 18th, another earthquake all of a sudden triggered the whole thing. The whole northern face of the mountain collapsed. Lava began to pour down. Over 1,000 feet of elevation of the mountain suddenly disappeared in the explosion. This eruption led to the deaths of 57 people, destruction of homes and highways, untold numbers of dollars of economic challenge for thousands. Anger is disruptive. It plays havoc with our emotions and our ability to think. It can damage relationships. It can fracture families. Listen to what Paul, the author of 1 Timothy, said. I want men everywhere to lift up holy hands in prayer without anger or disputing. Now, it's evident from this to me that anger can also disrupt and hinder our conversation with the Father if we allow it to take over our lives. Now, this emotion is something that yields consequences we neither need nor desire. So what does James have to say about this emotion that we all encounter at times? Here's what he says. My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. For man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Therefore, get rid of all moral filth, the evil that is so prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. Now, I like the beginning words are take note of this. Now, when you see something like that, you say, okay, this is something I need to listen to, right? As I mentioned, I am intimately acquainted with this emotion. I'm sorry to say that. I've had people say to me before, I can't imagine you getting mad. You seem so happy. Well, I'll tell you what. I look at this prescription from James, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, and I realize how many times I totally reverse that equation. Okay? I don't listen. I'm quick to speak. And here's what happens to me. I flare. Now, these are very helpful things. If you're out in the night, road flares, they can save your life, right? But you put this, you light this, I'm not going to light it, of course, in church. You light this thing up and you put it in the wrong place, what happens? Total destruction. Anger. It can be useful. Okay? Righteous anger can lead to changes being made. It can bring attention to the underserved or disadvantaged. Jesus displayed anger at times. When they were buying and selling things in the temple courts, Jesus made a whip. He drove out the animals, drove out the money changer, and said, my house, my Father's house, should be a house of prayer, not commerce. He showed anger toward the Jewish leaders who were more concerned about following their rules and regulations than they were about the people who were standing around them in need of help and comfort. Now, I know that righteous anger is real. I have felt it at times. I have felt, especially when I'm looking at injustice or the wrong treatment of people, especially little ones. Boy, it just gets to me. However, that's not the anger that assaults most of us most of the time, if I'm honest with myself. Through James, though, God gives us ways to manage this emotion that we all have. And while there are different things that spur anger, different things like computers and so forth, I mean, James' prescription here seems to fall more into the category of relational points and relational challenges. So let's talk about that today. I think there are 3 steps that James tells us, 3 simple instructions as we work and live with others. The first thing he says, be quick to listen. Now, this is not normal behavior, especially when we feel it start to bubble, right? I mean, I want my opinion to be heard. when I'm feeling a little frustrated. Now, I know what this type of attitude should look like. It should have an open posture like this, okay? I also recognize that many times, honestly, when I'm in a situation where I really don't want to listen, it's more like this. And I'm thinking what I'm going to say. I don't want to listen. Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, wrote a chapter entitled, Seek First to Understand. And what he was telling his readers that we need to listen to what others think and feeling when it comes to communication. We listen with a penchant toward trying to understand where they are and what they're thinking and what may have caused them to say or do what they did that all of a sudden caused us to flare up a little bit. I was interviewing a potential church planter last week. I invited the wife, ask any question you want to. She asked some very pointed questions on support and encouragement. And I wondered why, but when I asked her to tell me her story, I began to understand why she had the concerns she did because of what she had experienced in her past. So I tried to listen to understand. Now, what does being quick to listen mean? It means we need to put our ears on, okay? Yesterday I came downstairs to my office and I told Darla, I couldn't hear what you were saying. She looked at me, all of a sudden she started laughing, right? Because I look good with a big ear on, right? We don't always need to be sharing our thoughts and opinions, is what this says. As we practice active listening, and this works with our children very well, by the way, we learn where someone is. We learn what makes them respond the way they do and why they're feeling the way they are. And it's very much appreciated by those who hear us listening, who see us listening. And this is the first step, honestly, to diffusing the anger bomb, because when we listen first, it helps us understand others better. So, listening first. Secondly, we need to be slow to speak. I like watching police videos. I like live PD, live PD cam. I enjoy that. The situations often make me shake my head as I observe the places that people put themselves into by making poor decisions, right? But what never ceases to amaze me is the cool-headed responses of the officers as they interact with people. Now, most of the time they're cool-headed. People can be up in their faces, calling them names, swearing at them, and the officer's response, sir, ma'am, you really don't want to do this, okay? And we were watching one yesterday, and I just said to Darla, does the lady not understand what's going on here? And she didn't. And my son's a cop, okay? You know, my son's a cop, okay? And I've seen him in action before in tense situations. And he keeps us cool. Now, I'll tell you what, I grew up with this boy. Okay? He's got a lot of me in him. Honestly, he does. And he didn't always keep us cool like that. And I thought, what has made the difference here? And the answer is his training and experience. He's learned how to deal with people, even when their anger is spilling over all over the place. Remember these from last week? Okay? The reins, right? Okay, you put the bridle on the horse, and the reins. So what we're told here is we need to be quick to listen and slow to speak. I said this last week, I want to say it again. Just because something comes into our head doesn't mean it needs to come out of our, right? Sometimes we just got to pull back and say, whoa, Nelly, right? I know I'm talking to myself here. I really am. You get to come along on the ride with me. I believe we can control what we say. The reason is, I know I can control what I say. And I flare. Even when I'm mad, if I'm in a certain situation, I can rein it in no problem. And if I can rein it in no problem certain times, I can rein it in no problem at any time. Abraham Lincoln, when he died, they found a stack of letters in his desk. All of them had this notation on the envelope: never sent. And what they were angry letters. They were things he wanted to say to his generals because they didn't fight the way he wanted them to fight. Because they could have won the war a lot quicker, a lot easier. And so these guys who underperformed, Lincoln would see what they did, and he just got ticked off at them. And so he wrote it down. I was like, I'm going to send this letter. And then he, never sent into the desk drawer. Be slow to speak. When I listen to the Spirit and pull back on the reins, I'd never regret doing that. When I let the bomb go. So it's not a bad thing to take time to process. Because we're told as we listen, we can take a deep breath. Be slow to speak. And keep it to ourselves. Listen to what the Spirit's trying to tell us to say. We have the Spirit. If we follow Jesus, we have the Spirit inside. And He will direct us. The third thing we're told is we need to be slow to become angry. Now, one of the things my grandchildren love to eat, I'll be honest, I do too. Okay? Now, when we get the whole family together, we put 2 or 3 boxes of these in one big pan. We feed everybody at once, right? So you know how this works. You bring the pan to a boil, you dump the macaroni noodles in, and then you allow it to watch it cook. Now, if you're anything like me, you've gone away and you've left the pot on the stove, right? And it's cooking. And what happens as it's cooking? The water's rising, right? And it doesn't take me long before I hear that shh. And I realize it's boiling all over everywhere, right? Now, what never ceases to amaze me, you take the pot off the flame, the water level goes right down. Put it back on, water level starts to rise again. You take it off, put it down. I mean, I do that 4 or 5 times, right? To cook it right. Every time you take it off the flame, the level goes down. What happens when we start feeling anger bubbling up inside? I think it's best to take it off the burner. So I was out in my backyard one time, and I was cleaning out the shed, and I had my spreader, my lawn spreader, caught on something. So I was doing this, and I turned around and I caught the edge of the shed door right here. I don't have a lot of padding up here, okay? I don't know if you've noticed that or not, but anyway, I got mad. Now Darla was out there with me, and she saw me, and she said, I looked at that spreader and I grabbed it, and she said, "Don't do it." I took my hand very calmly, moved her out of the way, and I threw that thing as far as I could out of the yard. I think some of you can feel my pain, can't you, right? Now, what do you do when you feel it starting to boil? You got to take it off the flame, guys. During the week I wrote this. I made a conscious effort to try and diffuse seasons of frustration, okay, conflict. I stepped away from a building project for a couple of minutes just because I could feel it rising, right? I have a problem with this. I felt it rising, so I stepped away. I took some deep breaths. I took some more deep breaths as I was driving. Have you ever noticed how driving can bring out the best and the worst in you? Yeah, it does in me anyway. I tried to listen to the Spirit and not let my tongue spring out of control when the anger started to bubble. And what I found, for me, the rage monster comes out of what I say. Okay? I feel it starting to bubble. Hey, this is an outlet. That's not a good outlet. Okay? That's why I think James says be slow to speak. That was a good week for me when I wrote this. I beat it several times, but I know me. And I know anger is a tripping point. So what I want to do is I want to try and break some of these habitual responses to situations that trigger the flare. That's where I want to wrap it up this week, okay? Verse 21. Therefore get rid of all moral filth, the evil that's so prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. Look at these pictures. Okay? I took these from several different mud races. They showed what happens to the runners during the race, right? What do you think they do at the completion of the race? You think they live in those clothes? Heavens no. I'm sure they take off the clothes they're wearing, they jump in the shower because they want to get cleaned off. And that's literally what the word when it says get rid of. That means strip off the old habits that are bringing the mud and put on the new ones that bring freedom. Put on new habits like being quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. See, when we accept the fact that God knows what's best for us and wants what's best for us, we can humbly, and when it says humbly accept the word planted in you, it means we just tell God, I cannot do this on my own. I need your help. And God says, I'm here. I'm here to help. And when we put his words into action, it can help us diffuse the eruption, even in the most challenging of circumstances. So here's what I'd like to ask you to do this week. When an opportunity to erupt presents itself, and I'll tell you what, guys, it will come. You know that. You know that. Listen first. See, what's the Spirit trying to teach you in this? I've noticed many times the problem's not with the person I'm talking to. The problem's with me. The problem's with my filter, my baggage causing the issue. So try to listen to the story of the other person. Try to get some backstory. Understand where they're coming from before jumping to conclusions or jumping to assumptions. Just give it a shot to listen first and see what happens to the anger, because I think it'll still start to dial it down a little bit. Then be slow to speak. I'm sure you're going to have an opportunity the week ahead, I know I will, to speak out of turn or to say things that you might regret later. I know I will. I have that tendency. So my challenge is listen to the Spirit during this thing. He's present. And if you hear the warning, don't say that. Pull back on the reins. Don't say it. Don't say it. See what happens. See what happens. And the third thing, be slow to anger. In the week ahead, try not to let the things build up inside of you to the eruption point. Do whatever it takes to take the pot off the flame. Maybe it's taking a deep breath. Maybe it's counting to 10. Stepping out of the situation for a minute or two. Maybe it's even talking to God real quick, just saying one of those bullet prayers, saying, Lord, help, help. But put it into practice and see what happens. For those of you who are reading through Proverbs with me, today's day 7, Proverbs 7 is what I read today. Yeah, and I know in the chapters coming up ahead this next week, the wisest man who ever lived has a lot to say about this emotion. And when we listen, and we try to put these things into practice, God helps us. See, I battle this emotion much more than I want to admit. And even though I know better, when it erupts, it is never, ever pretty. But you know what happens? When it does, and it does, and it does. I confess my failure. I make my apologies. I apologize to the Father, first of all, and then I apologize to anyone I've wronged. I pick myself up, get going again. I am grateful for the amazing grace of God, aren't you? He continually pours out into my life and in the life of all of us who follow him. And what I've been given, I need to extend to others. None of us have it all figured out. But we all have a Father who loves us as his valued children. If you have questions about that, make sure you talk to me. Talk to somebody after church who knows Jesus. Because we have who it takes to help us. Yeah, God has given us many ways to manage this emotion we all have experienced. So my encouragement is to put these training tools into action this week. Just see what happens. Get one win. Get one win, because one win leads to another win, leads to another win, and before we know it, we're a few wins down the road, and we can say, hey, this really does make sense, and I can be strong and stand against unrighteous anger. Let me pray. Father, thank you so much for your amazing grace. Yeah, you give us what we don't deserve, and we are grateful for that. Thankful for the fact that you take us where we are, and you help move us as we listen to you, as we follow you, as we plug these simple instructions into place. You help us, so thank you for that. And I pray for each one of my friends here today that you help us in the week ahead to do these 3 things. In Jesus' name, amen.